Hi, I'm Tom Field, Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. I'm talking about the insider threat today, the malicious insider as well as the accidental insider. It's my pleasure to be speaking with Randy Trzeciak. He's Research Director at the Insider Threat Center within the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. I got every one of those right the first time, didn't I?
Very good. Thanks, Tom, for the introduction. Thanks for having us here.
Always a pleasure to see you. Randy, you've been talking about the insider threat with our organization for a number of years now. When you get up and talk about standing up an insider threat program, let me ask you first, what's the most important information you want to convey about the insider threat as it manifests in 2018?
Well, certainly the recognition that insiders potentially could cause a threat to organizations' critical assets is one of the foundational bodies of the work that we've been trying to do, raising awareness of insider threats, recognizing that it should be part of your enterprise-wide risk assessment of your assets and protection of assets as well. And as we look to build a formal program, recognizing it should be integrated into your overall enterprise risk assessment strategy, and recognizing that's one component of the threat matrix being internal or external, malicious or non-malicious.
Before we sat down here and talked, you and I were chatting a bit, and you said that you sometimes get the question, well, gee, haven't we solved the insider threat program or problem yet?
Yes.
How do you respond to that?
Well, certainly recognizing that as we look at critical asset protection, it starts with threat identification. As threats to assets change over time, including internal threats, organizations need to be aware of what the threat landscape looks like and how those tend to evolve over time. Just like the external threat hasn't been solved, as external threats evolve, as organizations get better at protecting critical assets, the same should be true from insider threats as well. As we implement controls that are preventative controls or detective controls, malicious insiders may evolve because of their knowledge of what the controls that we put in place as well. And as we look at the non-malicious insider threats, those typically aren't malicious, but they still potentially could cause harm to assets as well. So again, what you do to protect the assets may then allow an insider to evolve or to be able to exploit some other vulnerability that could exist in the organization's network.
Again, before we sat down here, we gave the audience at our event a poll about which was the bigger concern for them, the malicious insider or the accidental insider. I peeked at the results before we came out here, and it looked like accidental was winning by a fair margin. Does that surprise you at all?
No, not really. As we look to the majority of the employees for organizations, they have the best interest of the organization at heart. As we look to bring employees that are trusted into organizations, most will continue to, not necessarily violate, but actually work with the acceptable use policies and conform to the rules of the organization. So if some type of asset were to be compromised, most likely it's an accidental as opposed to a malicious, as most organizations will never experience a malicious insider attempting and actually causing harm to the organization's critical assets.
Now, when we turn to the topic of standing up an insider threat program, I know this is something you've been really engaged with government with, and do it to some extent with the private sector as well. Give me sort of one key takeaway about standing up an insider threat program that you'll be sharing with our audience.
Certainly the recognition that the need of a program should exist within an organization, getting senior executive commitment to the program as well. And as we look to evolve the program over time, looking for ways to measure the effectiveness of the program, that return on investment is key as we look to get the senior executive buy-in, as we look to integrate that with the entire enterprise-wide risk assessment and the protection strategies that need to be put in place.
Excellent. I appreciate your time and insight, Randy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I've been talking about the insider threat. I've been talking with Randy Trzeciak with Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute and the Insider Threat Center. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you very much.